Hello, welcome to another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. I'm Lady TrenettWilson. I'm your lecturer and social historian. And everyone, I want to say thank you. We are at 9,000 subs. I just cannot believe it. I am so overwhelmed with gratitude and appreciation for your love of the Royal Black and Elite parts of Black history. And today is no exception. Today's show is going to be absolutely amazing because we're going to talk about a woman who's little known in the world, but she's really known in the fashion industry. Meet Zelda Wynn Valdes. She was a fashion designer to the stars. And when one of the most iconic costumes needed to be perfected, it was Zelda who they called in. The eldest of seven children, Zelda was born on June the 28th, 1901, in a place called Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. But she wasn't raised there. She was actually raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her father's name was James W. Barber, and he was a cook on the railroad. And he was really a great cook because he was able to afford for his wife, Blanche, to live as a homemaker and raise their seven children at home. And she was a seamstress. And that's where Zelda learned to sew. She graduated in 1923 from Chambersburg High School, and that's the same year that her family moved to White Plains, New York. Now, while in White Plains, New York, she began to apprentice and work at her uncle's tailor shop, and that's where she really began to learn the art of fashion. Now, fashion back in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s was absolutely beautiful, marked by the beautiful design of the clothing, its modesty, yet look how beautiful the women were back then. Classy and elegant, always having on hats and gloves and just beauty from head to toe. And this is the environment that Zelda learned how to sew. Not only was her uncle had a tailoring shop, but she learned how to tailor these clothes as just a young woman, like 19, 17, 18, 19 years old. And I often talk about us needing to get back to what makes us so great, the craftsmanship, the elegance, the excellence, and we see it here in these photos. And during this time also, clothes were going into ready to wear. So to be a seamstress and to be able to have these skills would help Black women pay their bills and take care of their family. Now, a lot of these really gifted seamstresses ended up in these ready-to-wear manufacturing plants because they had to pay their bills. So they didn't reach the heights of Zelda, but they were some really gifted and talented women. Now, after she finished working at her uncle's place, she worked at a high-end fashion store. And that's where she learned sales as well as even more tailoring, which ultimately led to her opening up her own dress shop in Manhattan in 1945, and it was on Broadway. It was the first dress shop ever owned by an African American woman. And to be in Manhattan and on Broadway, it placed her right in the center of being able to work for some of the most notable stars of the time. Now, a dress shop for a Black woman during this time and to have a place for Black women to shop was extremely important because a lot of times there was a lot of segregation and racism in shops that weren't Black. So during this time, many Black people owned their own just to be able to get the necessities of what they needed. So just like these stores, her store also sold jewelry, accessories, and provided seamstresses and design services for their clients. And her clients were the top of the entertainment industry. You see, Zelda knew a woman's body and she knew how to bring out their femininity and their appeal. And so she was known for these beautifully tight, fitted dresses. And because of that, stars started coming to her because she knew how to make them look beautiful. People like you might recognize, like Josephine Baker. Or how about even Mae West? Look at this dress, y'all. This was designed by a Black woman. And word was spreading. She even designed Maria and Nat King Cole's wedding ensemble. Look at this. Nat King Cole, Natalie Cole's father. Now, there was this young lady back in the day. She was known as the Black Marilyn Monroe, or at least that's what Life magazine called her. Her name was Joyce Bryant. And what happened is Zelda helped her keep her career because she redesigned her clothes, made her a little bit more sexy, and her music blew up after that. It is said that she credited Zelda for her career taking off and being able to be sustainable. So, way to go, Zelda, with those clothes. Even Gladys Knight was one of her customers. And we know we love Gladys Knight in the Pips. People like Eartha Kitt. And Eartha Kitt was known as this siren back in the day. But Zelda even designed for her. And as you see in these pictures, every time we see Zelda, she's bent over helping someone. Because oftentimes back in those days, they never presented, at least the black designers, in a photo shoot where she was looking all glamorous wearing the clothes that she designed. They always wanted her to look like the help. But Zelda was not the help. She was a business owner and designer to the stars. So I always want to make sure I put some respect on her name. She designed for Dorothy Dandridge, who we know was during the time of Marilyn Monroe. She lived a very tragic life, but she was known as one of the most beautiful women ever known. For Ella Fitzgerald, for Pearl Bailey, she designed for every woman who sang. And unlike some of the restaurants and designers back in those days, she designed for white people, but she made it a point to also design for black people. And even though she made these little tight dresses we see, the thing was she made dresses from for sizes 4 to 24. So she understood the woman's body, and they really loved her for that. In 1950, she moved Ches Zelda to Midtown, and she had a staff of 9 dressmakers. And it is reported that her dresses sold for $1,000 a piece, which would be about $12,000 today. So Zelda, she gave back to her community. She was active in the civil rights movement and preventing and fighting against discrimination. So she was a very important person in the black community. That's why I'm so glad finally people are starting to learn about some of these really royal elite blacks from back in the day who changed the game. And one way this woman changed the game, and this is what she's most known for, because she had already established herself as the go-to person in entertainment. And when Hugh Hefner was looking for someone to sew his iconic Playboy uniform, he tapped Zelda, and Zelda delivered. So the original idea from the outfit came from Victor Lowens, who was his promotional director's girlfriend. Her name was Izzy Torrin. Well, Izzy's mom sold the first prototype. And what she did was she kind of just stitched together a bathing suit to kind of give him an idea of what it would look like. And then she took some yarn and made the bunny tails. So it was kind of like what he wanted, but it still needed to be perfected. And Zelda perfected it. She added the lace-up detail. She also moved the cut up around the hips. She put the corset in, and they debuted the Playboy uniform at his official hotel in Chicago at the Playboy Club in 1960. Zelda continued to sew really up until her old age. She continued to work with stars and being depended upon for costumes. And not many people could go from costume wear to regular wear, but she was able to design it all. And really also in her old life, the costumes really came back for her. That's really where she ended her life making. That's what she ended her life making. You see, in 1970, she was 65 years old, and Arthur Mitchell, who was the director of the Harlem Dance Theater, commissioned her to begin to make their outfits. And she made outfits for over 80 productions. And she worked for the Harlem Dance Theater until her death in 2001 when she was 96 years old. She lived a full and very prosperous life, doing what she loved to do. She also taught young women how to sew and opened many doors for other fashion designers that came after her. There's no record of Zelda having any children or ever being married. There are no monuments to Zelda. Her dresses are not in the museums all across the world. It's just astounding how so much of her history has been lost. But it's found today because we have featured her here on Royal Black and Elite. I hope that you enjoyed the show. I hope you learned a lot about fashion and where it came from. As always, I want to thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and hit the notification bell so you'll know when my next upload is. Today's show was for entertainment and educational purposes only. My sources were blackpast.com, the Metropolitan Museum, and the New York Times. Check out my next video on Ann Lowe. And thank you for joining me.